The radical feminism of this world is always pointing the finger at men and blaming men for all of their troubles and all of their woes and all of the bad things that happen to them. Like being, just savagely hit by men and things like that. But they don't ever show up the other side of the coin and talk about the way that women have punished men, have hit men, and have even put men in jail to destroy their lives. They don't talk about that, and I wonder why. So I created this podcast, which I have titled, The Crude Reality is that radical feminism is destroying men. Please join me. The New Radio Church of God and the Plain and Simple Truth Ministries present the Messenger of the Lord with Apostle shiw, preaching the gospel of the good news of the kingdom of God and informing you about world events in the light of Bible prophecy and preparing the way for the return of Jesus Christ. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Apostle shiw. It all started with this phrase. While reading a book, I came across a passage that just made no sense at all. This is the age in the West of the soft masculine, and it is a time in which radical feminists raise loud and hostile voices against the warrior energy. Before we continue, let's take a step back and talk about the warrior. The warrior is one of the 4 mature male archetypes. The others are king, magician, and lover, which can be found in every man according to Jung's school of psychology. Along these mature male archetypes, there are also 4 immature male archetypes called the divine child, a clear reference to the Catholic baby Jesus, the Oedipal child, the trickster or the devil, and the hero. All of these immature and mature archetypes can be found in all normal men throughout their lifetime according to this king of psychology. Depending if they ascended from their boyhood to manhood, we'll see the mature or the immature male archetypes accordingly. For a man to be masculine, he needs to understand the presence of all of these archetypes and access them. J.D. Hart, behavioral and clinical psychologist. For a woman to understand men, she needs to acknowledge the archetypes' presence and the importance of them being in their full form. At Hart. What is their full form, you may ask? Well, as is depicted in, I have a graphic here, very successfully in the book. To understand the archetypes full form, first we need to imagine all of these archetypes as pyramids. So we have the warrior in his fullness, the king in his fullness, the sadist, the masochist, the tyrant and the weakling, the lover in his fullness, the addicted lover, the impotent lover, the magician in his fullness, the detached manipulator, and the denying innocent one. As you can see in this context of the pyramids, the archetypes have 3 parts. At the top is the archetype in its full positive form, and at the bottom parts, marked with a plus and negative sign, are the active or passive forms of the shadow version respectively. Now I get it, you might be confused. What even is an archetype and a shadow version, you may ask? These 2 terms were commonly used by Carl G. Jung to describe parts of the psyche. Archetypes, as described by Carl Jung, are universal symbolic patterns or images that exist in the collective unconscious which is a part of our unconscious mind, shared by all humans. These archetypes always represent fundamental human experiences, emotions, and behaviors. Think of archetypes as common blueprints or templates that shape our thoughts, feelings, and actions. They are ingrained with us from birth and influence how we perceive and interpret the world around us, according to Jung. They can be found in folk stories, mythology, and even religious texts such as the Old Testament or the Quran. The shadow represents the hidden, repressed, or denied aspects of ourselves that we are not consciously aware of or tend to reject. It's like a mysterious dark side that lives inside each of us. It's made up of things we don't want to admit or show to others, such as our fears, anger, jealousy, and selfishness. This is why Jeremiah wrote, "The heart, or the mind rather, is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it?" Jeremiah 17:9. And Jesus also said this in relation to the mind. And Jesus said, "Are ye also yet without understanding? Do not ye understand that whatsoever entereth in at the mouth goeth into the belly, and is cast out into the draught," the toilet? "But those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, that is the mind, and they defile the man. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man, but to eat with dirty and washing hands defileth not a man." Matthew 15:16-20. Imagine it as a secret room in your mind where the human spirit dwells, where all these feelings and thoughts hide. Sometimes we try to be good and hide these feelings because we think they are not acceptable or don't fit with how we want to be seen. But the shadow doesn't go away just because we ignore it. It lurks in the dark, and when we least expect it, it can show up its ugly head in surprising ways. And I have shown here a picture where you have a lot of women protesters, and they have a big sign that says, "The future is female." These are so much radical feminine protesters. Radical feminism at its finest, or should I say at its worst. "As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee, cause thee to err, and destroy the way of thy paths." Isaiah 3 verse 12. Before we continue, let's address something noteworthy. In today's society, we see that general traditional feminism is often intertwined with radical feminism. Feminism nowadays doesn't want balance and equality. Instead, it wants men's suffering. They ask for a complete reordering of our society, the introduction of matriarchies, and the demolition of the patriarchy. These types of ideologies are slowly destroying men, and I think it's disgusting. Why, you may ask? Because according to most psychologists, they forbid men to get in touch with the full positive form of their male archetypes. For example, when women restrict men from getting in touch with the warrior, we then see the shadow form come to light. When they allow their shadow to take over, men become emotionally and easily physically violent, exactly like a volcano that's dormant for centuries. We live in a society where men are pressured to not be in touch with their masculinity and their true selves. Women simply ask men to be something they're not meant to be. What are men meant to be? Men are meant to be all of the archetypes in their fullness according to modern psychology, because when a man expresses the king in his fullness, we see a creative man calling the right shots, inspiring a true leader, and a man that can truly let his children grow to take the throne once he's gone. When a man is in touch with the warrior in his fullness, We see a man that's just simply taking the initiative. He's fearless, he's a doer, has clarity of mind, and is ruled by discipline. When we see a man that's close to the magician in his fullness, Hart says that we see him having awareness, insight, and an endless amount of knowledge, a true observer, quote unquote. Lastly, when a man that manifests the lover archetype in his fullness, we see a man that's sensual, sensitive, daring, and connected with his partner on every level imaginable. All of these traits are exactly what a true man is supposed to be. But here's the issue. Feminists are not instilling the idea of equality. Instead, they're just trying to belittle men in every way possible. You scroll through posts about feminism on different platforms, and you see comments talking about how misogynistic men are, that men have no idea how to treat a woman, they don't understand the struggles that they're going through, and how being masculine is just the same as abusing women. The issue is that these feminists are extremely concentrated on making guilty men for all their woes, problems, and troubles, and that's not realistic at all. Yes, men have no clue what issues and struggles women are going through. We're nothing alike. Yes, men have no idea how to treat a woman, but the lack of communication and indecisiveness from their side doesn't make things any easier. Yes, men don't know how to be really masculine, and they do end up emotionally and physically abusing women. The two reasons why I think these things keep happening are, number one, these are three reasons. Number one, women don't know and don't want to learn how to help their men bring these male so-called archetypes and characteristics to light. Number two, men keep listening to women on how to be masculine, but not a single woman is listening to men when they tell women how to be feminine. Do you see the irony? Number three, women won't ever admit nor recognize that they also have a huge problem to address and must quit judging men. So, let's talk about identifying cruel and evil women. Most women who are guilty of this type of behavior and personality will appear to be sort of an angel in disguise at first. The problem comes when you truly discover the fallen angel and devilish personality when it is already too late. You have bit the bait, hook, line, and sinker. She then reels you into her evil and malevolent den, and soon you find yourself trapped, like Samson did with Delilah, and with no physical nor mental strength to escape her mesmerizing and seductive ways until she squeezes your very soul out of you. Just please listen to this article regarding this subject. Evil in Women, the Delilah Syndrome, a new psychiatric syndrome by Oscar R. Schmalzbach. And it came to pass when she presented him daily with the words and urging that his soul was vexed unto death, and he told her all his heart, and said unto her, There has not come a razor upon my head, and if I shall be shaven, then my strength shall go from me, I shall become weak. This quotation from the Bible is used here as an introduction to a psychiatric syndrome, which I would like to call the Delilah Syndrome. It is not unusual for biblical names and personalities to be used in modern psychiatry to describe a syndrome or a personality problem. Freud used mythology as well, i.e. Oedipus, Electra complex, etc. I believe that the Delilah Syndrome, which will be described in this podcast, is an important new one which, according to our researchers, has not been published to date. The first time I thought of it was on March 23, 1973, early morning hours, when I put on paper the general points about the syndrome as evil in women based on the story of Delilah. A recent check through computers at various libraries, universities, etc., shown that no such syndrome in the context of evil was previously described. There were two references to Delilah, one by Professor R.B. Greenblatt of Georgia, USA, in 1976, who wrote in a chapter of his monograph In Search of Scriptures about Samson's most infamous haircutting history, and mentioned it in connection with modern men's preoccupation with his hair, and especially head hair, as a symbol of beauty and unisex, etc. The other reference was made by Dr. Alan Gerson, who wrote about the role of aggressive fathers in female promiscuity and spoke of Delilah in this context only. Perspective in Psychiatric Care, Volume 12, Verse 2, April 1974. No description of a true Delilah syndrome has been published as far as could be ascertained. According to Oxford, the definition of this type of syndrome is thus referenced as promiscuity in a woman motivated by a desire to render men weak and also helpless, named after the Philistine mistress of Samson in Judges 16, 4-22, who deprived him of his strength by cutting off his hair. The Free Dictionary defines it as Delilah syndrome, a condition describing the daughters of domineering and very dominant, aggressive men who are often and typically very dictatorial and harsh and sexually promiscuous, a behavior related to fear and dislike of the father, and an unconscious switching of roles with the father figure, such that they seduce and overcome men. However, the fact of the matter is that many women today are empowered and driven by this syndrome in order to persecute, punish, destroy, and to demoralize and dominate men. Just take a look at the following article that I'm going to read to you. It's called The Delilah Syndrome, Women on the Rise. Brattleboro. The story of Samson and Delilah is as old as the hills, a heroic man undone by a manipulated woman. In fact, Delilah has become an iconic and very real representation of the designing woman, whose main character flaws, one might argue, are intelligence, independence, and insight. In a unique partnership, the Brattleboro Concert Choir, performing Handel's dramatic oratorio Samson in May, and Girls on the Run, Vermont, inspiring girls to become independent, healthy, and confident, are hosting a conversation to explore Delilah and bring her up to date. The Brattleboro Concert Choir, a program of the Brattleboro Music Center, and for 25 years under the direction of Susan Dedell, has been bringing classical, contemporary, and commissioned choral music to growing audiences region-wide. Praised for her range of artistic choices, Dedell also feels it is important to really discuss the significant humanistic themes such music will always unearth. The collaboration between Dedell and Nancy Heidinger, director of the Vermont Council of Girls on the Run, recipient of the 2015 Girls on the Run Legacy Award, sets the stage for a new exploration of women's roles and choices. Marilyn Kuning, author, diplomat, and former governor of Vermont, will kick off the afternoon with keynote comments gleaned from her years in state and world politics and her work to assure women live productive and rewarding lives with careers and families. Through stories and conversations with dynamic and visionary women, and with input from the audience, the aim is to enlighten and empower and give Delilah her due, and just maybe understand Samson a bit better too. Another article I found online on this subject and topic is really more interesting and precise. The Delilah Syndrome and the Problem with Feminism. In 1919, thousands of women stood outside the White House and demanding that they be allowed to vote. In the next presidential election, they would. And this massive demographic shift paved the way to laws in the 1920s that would promote women's health and education, as well as prevention, but we'll just pretend that never happened. In the 1960s and 70s, feminist protests resulted in a series of laws that were guaranteed under the law. Equal rights in the workplace, in universities and colleges, in healthcare, and in the home. And in the early 2000s, feminists valiantly fought against such oppressive forces as the word too, quote unquote, scary sport mascots and patriarchal cereal boxes. The feminist movement is usually broken up into three waves. The first wave in the late 19th and early 20th centuries pushed for political equality. The second wave in the 1960s and 70s pushed for legal and professional equality. And the third wave in the past couple of decades has pushed for social equality. But whereas legal and political equality laws are usually clearly defined and measurable, social equality is murky and complicated. The current feminist movement is not a protest against unjust laws or sexist institutions as much as it is the protest against people's unconscious biases as well as of supposed and assumed centuries worth of cultural norms, gender injustice, and heritage that disadvantage women. This is a tricky business because you're no longer dealing with institutions here. You're dealing with people's perceptions and brains. You have to confront belief systems and irrational assumptions and force people to truly unlearn things that they've known for decades. It's a really, really hard thing to undertake. And the hardest part about it is that there's no easy metric in the social arena for what is equal and what is not. If, for example, I were a boss or manager and I fire 3 employees and 2 of them are women, is that equality? Or is that sexism? You can't say unless you know why I fired them. And you can know why I fired them unless you can get inside my brain and understand my beliefs and motivations. Thus, today, feminism has a measurement problem. It's easy to measure whether boys and girls are receiving the same funding in schools. It's easy to see whether a man and a woman are being paid appropriately for the same work. You just pull out your calculator and go to work. But how do you measure social justice? If people like a brother more than their sister, is it because she's a woman? Or is she just a shitty person? Or more aptly, if a few women think a college mascot is scary, perturbing, and intimidating, is that legitimate oppression? What about overused adverbs? How did we get here? Philosophical feminism versus tribal feminism. I don't think it's controversial to say that philosophically, feminism got it right. All people, regardless of gender, should be afforded the same rights and respect. This strikes me as a no-brainer for pretty much any decent human being alive today. Feminism also got it right that women have been oppressed throughout pretty much all civilized human history, in pretty much every culture and society, and there's a lot of baggage and residue of that oppression that carries on in various forms today. Feminism also got it right that despite their biological differences, men grow up in a culture of toxic masculinity that is not only unhealthy for women but also unhealthy for the men as well. All of this is correct. Let's call this loose group of ideas philosophical feminism. The problem is that feminism is more than a philosophy or a group of beliefs. It is now also a political movement, a social identity, as well as a set of institutions. See, there's this thing that happens to groups of people. They always start out with an idea, and often it's a pretty good idea. Then they come together and organize around that idea, because organizing large groups of people and by building structures to act in concert is the way you get things done in a society. But the problem is, once you got a group of people together, organized for a single purpose, achieving political leverage and adapting power, building and creating institutions and careers for themselves, all sorts of bad human nature tendencies start to take over. As humans, we are tribal by nature. Our natural default is to see ourselves as part of some group that's struggling against some other group or groups at all times. And once we're part of our little group, Our little tribe, we adopt all sorts of biases and preferences. We construct belief systems that justify our group's power and superiority. We create evaluation tests of whether other people are true and pure members of our group, and we either shame any non-believers into conformity or simply expel them from the tribe. As the comedian George Carlin once put it, I love individuals, I hate groups of people. I hate a group of people with a common purpose, because pretty soon they have little hats and armbands and fight songs and a list of people they are going to visit at 3 a.m. So I dislike and despise groups of people, but I love individuals. Once a philosophy goes tribal, it believes no longer exist to serve some moral principle, but rather they exist to serve the promotion of the group. In the past few decades, sexual violence has halved, and domestic violence has dropped by an outstanding 2/3. Women recently surpassed men in the workforce in the U.S. and earn almost 60% of all bachelor's degrees. And despite the constant drumming of 77 cents women earn on the dollar compared to men, when you factor in the fact that men work longer hours, more dangerous jobs, and retire later, the wage gap today is actually only something like 93 to 95 cents for every dollar a man earns. The point here is a lot of progress has been made since feminism's second wave in the 60s and 70s. So much progress has been made that even some people out there, feminists even, are becoming concerned that men are actually going to be left behind soon. But the problem is that, like I said, feminism, in the process of enacting all of the progress of the last 50 years, became more than a philosophy, became an institution. And institutions are always primarily and simply interested in just sustaining themselves first and engaging with the world as it is second. Those stalwart feminist activists of the 60s and 70s who were at protests and burning their brows or whatever, many of them moved into academia. They got graduate, bachelor's and master degrees, and they wrote books and founded departments and held seminars and conferences and created political parties and organizations and had fundraisers and had started magazines like Oprah. And pretty soon feminism was no longer a cause of these people. It was their career. Their paychecks depended on there being patriarchy and oppression for men everywhere they looked. Their departments depended on it. Their professional careers and speaking fees depended on it, and so they found it. And thus philosophical feminism became tribal feminism. Tribal feminism laid out a specific set of beliefs and rules that everywhere you look there is constant oppression from the patriarchy, that masculinity is inherently violent, and that the only differences between men and women are figments of our cultural imagination, not based on biology or science. That knowledge itself is a form of patriarchy and oppression, and it clearly stems from the short-sighted vision of women with an obvious and pretty much grounded Delilah syndrome, who usually see men as evil, wicked and perverse, despotic and bad individuals that must be controlled, contained, and easily subjugated and manipulated by them. Anyone who contradicted or questioned these beliefs soon found themselves kicked out of the tribe. They became one of the oppressors, and the people who pushed these beliefs to their furthest conclusions, that penises were a cultural construction of oppression, that school mascots encourage rape and sexual violence, that cereal boxes can be truly offensive, were rewarded with greater status within the tribe. This generation's tribal feminist trenches are obviously that of the feelings police, protecting everyone's feelings so that they could never feel oppressed or marginalized in any way. There's that overused Gandhi quote, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." Previous generations of feminists were the change they desired. They got out and protested and voted. They went to the schools and got the degrees and took the jobs. Yet today, tribal feminists are more interested in enforcing thoughts and perceptions about women rather than actually becoming the kind of women that they wish others to see. For centuries, women were marginalized and, yes, discounted by men. One of the many stereotypes that men ascribed to women when doing this was that women were overly concerned with their feelings and the ways others perceive them. Yet this is the same cliché behavior that tribal feminists have fallen back into. And thus, as with many philosophies taken out of context to their political arena, and extreme tribal feminism has come to contradict many of the very premises philosophical feminism was built upon. Tribal feminists, in the name of fighting shame and oppression, shame and oppress views that contradict their own, especially when they come from men who preach the Bible like I do.
Apostle Yeshua, a man with a charming, dynamic, endearing, and fantastic personality, has written his latest and last book, The Legendary Life of Ernest Yeshurun Hero, an autobiography, bringing the reader an amazing, astounding, astonishing, bewildering, dumbfounding, incredible, moving, shocking, and surprising story about his legendary life, antics, and eccentricities in his very own autobiography and memoirs. Very candid and fascinating story indeed. The book is full of delightful, entertaining, and fun memories and unique experiences of his existence since early childhood till now. In this book, Apostle Yeshurun shares with the reader a genuine and distinct story, a delightful story of triumphs, accomplishments, milestones, and the ups and downs of his life. A life that is noteworthy for the books of history and even the silver screen. Legendary Life of Ernest Yeshurun Hero. You better get your copy today at barnesandnoble.com and lulu.com.
And once your philosophy has embedded upon itself, it becomes corrupt. Just like the old communist societies of the 20th century, once you set out to try to provide perfect equality for everybody, you achieve the exact opposite. What was once progressive becomes regressive. You become so busy policing people's thoughts and opinions that you lose track of what actually matters. And so this type of women now become a new class of spurious and totalitarian dictators of men, and have come to persecute and belittle men with a true vengeance. And that, my friends, is truly the plain and simple truth. Unfortunately, I have come across many women with this type of mentality and attitude of a Delilah syndrome too many times already, including my actual and current wife, who is very dominant, domineering, excessively despotic, cruel, and abusive towards me every single day. She is always looking into the speck of my eye instead of taking the plank out of her own eye. Criticizes and judges me continually, and is always comparing me with others and putting me down, and that is outright discrimination, no matter how you look at it. She has never given me credit for my talents, professional abilities, and gifts, and feels that she is very much better than me. She has threatened me and has always fabricated, orchestrated, and concocted certain lies about my person in order to get me into some sort of trouble with the law, etc. And she has manipulated me and has even deprived me of certain pleasures because she has found out my weaknesses for female feet. She is indeed a true Delilah in every sense of the word. She told me that her dad used to be very dominant, cruel, despotic, and a street man who was a womanizer and mistreated her mom and siblings all the time. So I guess in a very psychological way, she's trying to mimic him and make my life miserable in the process. Let's have a synopsis of the biblical Delilah. The lips of an adulteress drip honey, and smoother than oil is her speech. Proverbs 5:3. How true of a woman who uses her feminine charm to beguile and deceive morally weak men to fall into sin. Delilah was one such woman, and Samson was one such man. Delilah made her home in the valley of Sorek, a valley Samson knew really well. At one end was the Philistine town of Timnah, where he had fallen in love with a Philistine woman, Judges 14:1-2. At the other end was Zorah, the hometown of Samson's father, Judges 13:2. It was there in the valley of Zorek that the rulers of the Philistines, modern-day Palestinians, bribed Delilah to entice Samson into her bedroom to discover the secret of his strength. Samson was physically strong but morally weak and an easy conquest for an evil and heartless cold woman like Delilah. On 3 separate occasions, as Samson enjoyed himself at Delilah's home, she pressed him to tell her his secret. Toying with her, Samson told Delilah that 7 fresh bowstrings of brand new ropes or the locks of his hair woven into a loom would sap his strength, but none did. Yet by much persistence, the cunning Delilah soon discovered his real weakness, illustrating the powerful charms of a deceptive and persistent woman. The fact and discovery that the secret of his strength was his long and beautiful hair, grown since birth in observance of Samson's Nazarite vow, never to cut it off, Judges 13:5. Lulling Samson to sleep in her lap, Delilah led the Philistine rulers who waited in the shadows to capture him. They sheared Samson's hair, and in his now and newly weakened state, bound him, gouged out his eyes, and forced him to grind grain in this prison at Gaza. In a few words, she destroyed Samson. And what happened to Delilah? She simply walked off the pages of history until Tom Jones sang about her on the Ed Sullivan Show. Delilah knew that her body could be used as a weapon. Preying on weak men or even strong men in weak moments, women can use the visual advantage to manipulate and control. When a woman uses her body as a tool, trouble is soon to follow. And trust me, I had to learn that lesson the hard way. I've fallen in love many a time with these sexually attractive women who came to me as wolves in sheep's clothing, even claiming to be Christian and so-called women of God, like this blonde with green eyes I knew in Miami. And lo and behold, they turn on me and almost destroy me mentally, morally, physically, and even psychologically with their charm. I used to have a brother in the Church of God by the name of Ray, who was an old bachelor in the church, and when people would try to suggest a single good-looking girl for him to date, he would always reply, "Oh no, she's a hot wire." And so my warning to all men is this: please be smart and avoid at all costs getting yourself electrocuted by some Delilahs out there. These are her traits according to the Bible, and you should follow this wise advice from Almighty God by following His wisdom. To deliver you from the seductive strange woman, even from the stranger, which flattereth with her words, which forsaketh the God of her youth, and forgetteth the covenant of her God, she is very worldly. For her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead. None that go unto her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life. Proverbs 2 verses 16-19. To keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman, lust not after her beauty in thine heart or mind, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. For by means of a whorish woman a man is brought to a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for the precious life. Proverbs 6:24-26. Let not thine heart or mind decline to her ways, go not astray in her paths, for she has cast down many wounded, yea, many strong men like Samson have been slain by her. Her house is a way to hell, the grave, going down to the chambers of death, the cemetery. Proverbs 7:25-27. Whoso is simple, let him turn in hither, and as For him that wanteth to have understanding, she saith to him, Stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he knoweth not that the dead are already there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell, the grave. Proverbs 9:16-18. The mouth of strange women with the Delilah syndrome is a deep pit. He that is abhorred of the Lord shall fall therein. Proverbs 22:14. And finally, men, please stay away from harlots and whores, for a whore is a deep ditch, and a strange woman who wears tattoos on her body, nose rings, piercings, etc., is a narrow pit. She also lieth in wait as for a prey, and increaseth the transgressors among men. Proverbs 23:27-28. So please, men, heed this warning. A message to all the women out there. Do you know what happens when a man ends up not being in touch with his masculinity? The king ends up failing his children, and his kingdom suffers. He ends up becoming a tyrant or a weakling. He's not generative or calm. He hates all beauty, all innocence, all strength, all talent, all life energy. When a man then showcases the shadow form of the king, he acts as a person with narcissistic personality disorder acts. The warrior becomes a sadist or a masochist. He can't keep his mind or feelings under control, and he adds an external signs of a strength to compensate for his ineptitude. This is why men become aggressive or self-destructive. The magician ends up becoming the manipulator or the innocent one, quote unquote. We see a man that's manipulating people to gain what he wants. He's usually passive-aggressive and he lacks morals. The lover turns to the addicted or the impotent lover. He's never satisfied. He starts a constant battle and race for endless amounts of sexual pleasure. He lacks boundaries and he cannot set the boundaries of others. Do these traits ring any bells? Trying to belittle men and their masculinity will just shed light on these parts of their shadow, and men will end up becoming more dangerous than they're now or were in the past. The Bible description of women nowadays and their judgment for their pride. Moreover, the Lord saith, because the daughters of Zion, Israel, are naughty, and walk with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making a tingling with their anklets on their feet. Therefore the Lord will smite with a scalp the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and the Lord will discover their secret parts in their body. In that day the Lord will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments and anklets about their feet, and their coals and their round tires or loop earrings like the moon, the chains and the bracelets and the mufflers, nose rings, etc., the bonnets and the sexy ornaments of the legs, all sorts of ankle chains, and the headbands they use for the gym and aerobic exercise, and the tablets and the earrings, the rings and the nose jewels, the changeable suits of apparel, the bag of clothing and shoes they keep in the trunk of their cars, and the mantles and the wimples and the crisping pins, the dark glasses and the fine linen and the hoods or the sweatshirts with hoodies, and the fishnet veils. And it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell there shall be stink, and instead of a girdle a rent, and instead of well-set hair baldness, and instead of a stomacher a girding of sackcloth, and burning instead of beauty. Thy men shall fall by the sword, by war, and thy mighty in the war. Isaiah 3:16-25. Now with the ongoing Ukraine war and Israel war in the Middle East, many fighting men have died. As a result, there is an incredible lack of men, especially real men, in the Balkan states and other countries in Eastern Europe like Armenia, Belarus, Bulgaria, Croatia, Estonia, Hungary, Kosovo, Latvia, Romania, Russia, Serbia, Slovakia, Slovenia, etc. Women outnumber men by the thousands. And this is why I've seen videos on YouTube where women will even pay you to marry them, as it was prophesied in the Bible. And in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread, and we will bring home the bacon, and wait and buy and purchase our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy last name in marriage, to take away our long reproach. Isaiah 4 verse 1. Bible instructions for wives and husbands. Likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word of God, they behold your chaste conversation coupled with fear of God, whose adorning let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting their hair or painting their hair with crazy colors, and of wearing of gold jewelry and other accessories, or of putting on of excessively sexy, loud, and costly apparel, but let it be the hidden woman of the heart, in that which is not corruptible, even as the ornament of the meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. For after this manner, in the old time, the holy women also who trusted in God adorned themselves, being in subjection unto their own husbands, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, her king and master, whose daughters ye are as long as ye do well, and are not afraid of them with any amazement. Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, not like Ralph Cramden of the Honeymooners, who was a chauvinist, telling Alice things like, because I'm king, Alice, king, 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 giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. 1 Peter 3 verses 1 through 7. Final notes. We're living in a world where the internet is taking over our lives, and we're constantly bombarded by videos, photos, music, ideas, and many more vital things that shape and affect us. Giving into the idea that we are all the same and we should be treated like we're the same is, in my opinion, idiotic. Every person is special, and we shouldn't allow others to instill their ideas and turn us into something that we're not. Instead, I think we should fight to understand who we truly are and find a way to get closer to our true self, understanding our human nature as living true to it is extremely important. Men and women are not the same, and we shouldn't fight to make them the same. Men are good at the X thing, and women at the Y, and that's okay. Our goal should be to combine powers and work together to produce something extraordinary and unique. Until next time, this is Apostle Yeshurun saying goodbye, friends.
You have heard the messenger of the Lord with Apostle Yeshurun, preparing the way for the return of Jesus Christ. For more information on this podcast and this program, you may write us by email at Yeshurun, Apostle of the Lord, at AOL.com. Again, that is Yeshurun, Yeshurun, Apostle of the Lord, at AOL.com. This podcast was sponsored by the New Radio Church of God and the Plain and Simple Truth Ministries, and by the free will offerings, tithes, and donations of those who are listeners of this podcast and are supporters of this great work of God. The preceding program has been a Plain and Simple Truth Ministries presentation.